I call the Urbana Historic Preservation Commission to order. Could we have roll call, please?
Mr. Dossett.
Here.
Mr. Metcalf.
Here.
Ms. Novak.
Here.
Ms. Peliuso.
Here.
Mr. Seiler.
Here.
Mr. Shepard. Ms. Smith.
Here. We have a quorum. There are no changes to the agenda. Next item is the approval of the minutes of the meeting of May 6th. Are there any additions or corrections to those minutes? We don't have our resident spell check man
I
here.
move to approve.
Second. Any additional comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Minutes are approved as written. Rare. Yay. Written communications? Mr. Garcia.
Did you want me to bring up that Mumford House one now, or is that old?
Okay, we'll wait.
Okay, so no.
Okay. Audience participation, we have no audience. No continued public hearings. Next item on the agenda is old business, 2015 preservation activities. And just continuing from what we did last time.
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay, I didn't do as much follow-up on things as I'd wanted to, but one of the things you have in your handouts are of 2 pages from the National Trust for Historic Preservation, and then Kevin also passed out a response I got from Frank Butterfield, who's the regional representative for Landmarks Preservation Council of Illinois, based in Springfield. He, as I recalled, worked for the National Trust during the time that they launched the This Place Matters campaign, and so he provided some information, and they reinvigorated the campaign recently. I think it started back in 2008. And so now it's geared toward, as he says, more toward Instagram and Twitter instead of Flickr, as it had been before, but it still seems to be pretty simple in the way that it's set up and people can contribute things. So if we wanted to move forward with that, maybe the next step is to talk with Sanford, the IT coordinator for the city, maybe to see what can be worked out.
Are we still considering potentially going forward with the city of Champaign?
That's true. I'll be seeing some folks from the planning staff tomorrow, so I might bring that up. They haven't met. They've had both of their last meetings canceled. So yeah, if everybody's still interested in that. Yeah.
I think it would be neat to kind of expand that, to the whole area.
Okay, I agree. Okay. And for checking in, we'd also talked about tables at the farmers market. Yes?
Yeah, we talked to our market coordinator, and she's on board with allowing the HPC to have a table at the market. So that's an option that we can pursue.
I think last time around I volunteered to put together like a trifold brochure, and I'm willing to do that. I did not get as far on that as I would like. I have a little outline, but I actually requested from Kevin a look at, I guess it would be the transcript of our podcasts that we do for the local historical tours. So maybe we can tie in some of these historic buildings, explain, why this is representative of a certain period, and then ideally kind of show them where it is, give them a little address with it. But I have not gotten as far, but I can do something for the next meeting.
Great. Thanks. Thanks for remembering. I was also wondering, what does it take to do a joint meeting between the Champaign Commission and Urbana Commission? I think we did something like way, way long time ago when you guys were in grade school, but.
Probably some advanced planning, I suppose, would be required. As you stated, the Champaign Historic Preservation Commission often does not meet, and so we'd need to definitely pick a time well in advance in order to ensure quorum, or maybe not quorum necessarily, but a decent turnout.
And they also meet at like Thursday afternoon at 4 o'clock as well too, so would it have to be during one of our regular meetings that we would have a joint meeting?
We could always schedule a a special meeting, as long as it's, of course, noticed properly.
Okay. And then can we meet in a place that's more conducive to 2 groups?
As long as it meets the requirements of the Open Meetings Act, so it needs to be accessible. So I'm sure
Okay.
we could find something that is,
Okay.
can accommodate both groups and is somewhat in between the two cities.
Okay. In the middle of Wright Street.
We'll get Public Works to look into that.
All right, so I may bring that up with Champaign folks to see as well, too. It just seems like if we're both having trouble getting nominations for landmarks and interested in doing educational activities, that it makes sense to see if we can invigorate each other's programs, maybe? Yes? Okay. Okay. Anything else on the activities that we talked about last time? Yes?
Refresh me.
We talked about maybe doing a How to Research Your Old House program, maybe in the fall or something probably makes more sense. Sweet Corn Festival, maybe for a presence there somehow.
I have not reached out on that, but I can.
Okay.
To the Sweet Corn Festival folks.
Okay.
Is that more appropriate for staff, or do you want me to do that? I'll do it. Okay, excellent. I just don't want to step on any toes. So, okay.
And then also, we talked about something else, maybe just tours kind of in general, I guess, without figuring out much detail or anything at the time. But maybe we're better off to do a few things at once and put tours off.
Theoretically, we already have them
Yeah,
online. We do have those 3 podcasts.
yeah, that's true.
Speaking of which, I think one of them, I could not download Tour 1's. There's a PDF on the Tour 1 page. It was giving me trouble. And so I don't know if that's a thing, or it was my computer, or I was at midnight last night. I wasn't with it. I don't
It's
know.
probably a thing. I'll look into it.
Okay, all right.
The Sweet Corn Festival,
Mhm.
so the UBA the Urbana Business Association is in charge of that.
Okay,
Cynthia Chandler is their director.
okay.
I kind of know her, but I think you should probably try yourself first.
Okay, okay. And are we thinking space, or specifically something? Because I know we had talked about potentially doing a demonstration of some kind, like a window kind of demonstration, or
Yeah, I don't know. Time goes quickly. I mean, I think it would be great to do something like that. I don't know who would do it, but maybe when you inquire, ask if it's possible to do a messy demonstration thing too.
yeah.
Yeah,
In addition to
Sweet
handing things
Corn
out.
is kind of a zoo, and there's alcohol there. So depending upon
There is.
where you want to position yourself to where the big stage is, I wouldn't take a hammer into that place if I were you.
Okay.
or
But if we were
us.
down at the Busey end, the opposite end.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of a very lightly used part of the venue. I don't know what they're doing with that. I mean, I don't know. It's Sweet Corn's kind of crazy. It would be. I mean, I've tabled there with WEFT and that kind of stuff before. We ran a stage last year for Folk and Roots, but table with some nice brochures might be nice. I wouldn't take sharp things there.
Okay.
I just wouldn't. Kids roaming around, people that have been drinking during the day. It's hot.
Okay, so in the back of my mind, I'm gonna be thinking about 2 things: an identification brochure. So, hey, this house is Greek Revival.
Mm-hmm.
This house is modern, mid-century. So something along those lines. But then also how to research a historic house. There are multiple online. I did look that up. There are multiple online sources. I presume we don't have anything like that currently in our set of information that the city's
Let's
developed.
look. I think the library has some helpful guides to using the archives
Okay.
things, and it's multiple pages as I recall. And I don't remember. I'll have to look back through some of our old things for the commission. I think at one time we had a 1-page flyer that might be helpful.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Anything else? I will continue to pursue This Place Matters, and you'll work on the brochure and look into the UBA space. And then maybe we'll eventually take somebody up on the Market of the Square space. Do they provide tables, or you have to have a table and a cover? Or?
It does not appear as though a tent would be available, but since you are associated with the city, we could probably at least find you a table.
That would be lovely. Any other thoughts?
Do we have anything else to hand out? I mean, I haven't been on long enough to know if we have swag or anything like that we give away that talks about, that either says, I heart my historic house, or something like that.
I don't think we do.
There are trifolds for the Royer Arts and
There
Architecture
are.
District.
Okay.
I don't know where the city is with printing that, but I think it's, I think that's a nice piece of work, so.
Mm-hmm. So do we need advance notice then? So if I just said like in 2 weeks, hey, I'll show up and hand out Royer trifolds and talk about what the...
Things are pretty tight right now at the market, is my understanding. And I should also point out, I think at your previous meeting, you suggested the demonstration might be good at the market, and that idea was received very well by the market coordinator. If you want to do a demonstration at the market, perhaps the fall might be a good time both for planning as well as getting someone on board. And there's also more likelihood there'll be table space available in the fall. But that is something we would need to reserve in advance for you.
Okay.
So because the city has like a booth there already, could Matt or one of us or a couple of us just hang out at that?
As I think we alluded to earlier, it's pretty, that space is in high demand, and they really need to focus on what their main focus is there. So unfortunately, there's not space for other groups, because if we allowed it for you, then we'd have to allow it for everyone, and you wouldn't be able to fit anyone under the tent. So whereas that would be a great idea, I think the idea of having your own table was better received, because then you draw people in with what you're doing, and you get probably a little bit more foot traffic that way.
Okay, thanks. Let's see. New business letter to the city council regarding the downtown district. Kevin or Lori first, or?
Sure. Just very briefly, we had staff discussions on the best, or on what we thought would be the most appropriate method to communicate the proclamation, as it was called initially, to the city council. And we feel that the best medium for that would be just a letter directed to city council. So we just basically took what was written in that proclamation, drafted it into a letter, and presented that to you. And then Mr. Metcalf made his own edits to that, and then sent that around. So you have those, and I think you can take that as a starting point for your discussion.
Okay. Comments?
I wanted to say that I brought in the MOR Development Review Board guidelines and their survey, so it's kind of helpful to see that, and also the Design Review Board. So I might pass these around so you can take a look, because it's kind of helpful to see how they talk about the different design characteristics that they look at for different, and they have different goals, the 3 different overlay districts.
Kim, as you looked at those, did you have any specific changes or suggestions to the text of the letter that you think would make it more germane to, I assume that's an ordinance, the things that are in the book?
Right, they have, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I do have some suggestions. I kind of took Matt's markup and kind of marked up what I kind of thought suggestions I would do. And the one thing down at, we're talking about recognizing what the zoning ordinance states for the Historic Preservation Commission, what their purposes are. I think the 5th purpose that's listed in the zoning ordinance is pretty relevant to, we might want to add that one. Talking about performing the functions that may be useful or necessary to safeguard and enhance the community heritage as embodied in historic parcels or buildings, structures, sites, or objects. I think that might be helpful. I don't know if we want to list all 5 purposes for the historic preservation. You've
Can't
listed-
remember, I can't remember why I truncated the list. At some point in time, it must have felt like the thing to do.
Yeah, it seemed like the 5th one was pretty pertinent to the whole.
Well, is
letter.
everybody in agreeable to adding what she just said? I mean,
Yeah.
okay, so can we add 5 there? Okay. What else
And-
you got?
Down under acknowledging, the city has precedent of design review boards. There's one design review board, and the other one, my understanding, is called a development review board. So I don't know if you want to say the city has a president of design and development review boards appointed to provide guidance and ensure compatibility between new, existing, and historic development in 3, I don't know if you need other, critical neighborhoods, MOR, Busey, Lincoln, and East Urbana. There currently are no design or development guidelines overseeing the development in the downtown area, rather than a design review board. It seems like it's the guidelines that you're seeking, that's what we really need are guidelines, and whether or not it's the design review board, a separate design review board that oversees it, or the one that's, existing. I don't know. But I think it's more that we're asking them to provide these guidelines, do the survey, provide the guidelines, so that developers have a way of having their developments be compatible with what's there. I don't know. I'm just throwing these out.
The board's probably going to write its own SOP
Right.
and, statement of purpose.
Right.
So I guess I don't feel strongly about that. I mean, I think brevity and conciseness was something that I was shooting for when I first started sticking all this together. And I heard what you said, but I'm having a hard time integrating it without being able to read it. So,
Yeah. And then I think just at the last thing, we request that the Urbana City Council expedite the protection of downtown Urbana through the creation of I would say, design review overlay district, rather than a design review board.
yeah, well, that was, I was specifically trying to avoid because that denotes zoning changes, which may be necessary if there is a design review board. But saying zoning to somebody like Libby or John is sort of like sticking them with a hot wire.
Oh, well, that's a good idea.
And I didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about that when Dennis made his comments last time, because he used those words, zoning overlay.
Mm-hmm.
And, maybe the city council will take this input and consider it to be serious enough that they elect to do that. But I just was hoping to be a little more mellow.
I think that's in the city council goals, though, that specific wording.
The overlay?
That Ken just used, yeah.
Yeah. I don't feel strongly about it really either way, except that I don't know whether staff has a comment about that or whether your discussions with the other folks in CD would offer any kind of suggestion for that. But
Maybe instead of design review board, that seems like that would have something to do with zoning too, just, guidelines, guidelines for owners to somehow, that they be established so that they wouldn't restrict the innovation and imagination of the design, but yet they'd promote the design compatibility with the existing
yeah.
historical structures.
Yeah, and see, to me, the important thing is to reference the extant precedent that we have. And so in the context that you corrected that or firmed that up, that some of these are design review boards and there was another one that you used, I agree with that. But guidelines to me are squishy.
Squishy.
No, I don't want the council to consider guidelines. I would like to see a review board, a process.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the only reason I'd kind of counter that.
But you have a review board because you have an overlay district, right?
Yes,
I'm
I
not-
think that's how you'd do it.
Yeah, I guess yeah. I don't know.
'Cause they need to have something to guide them in their review, so you would need to have guidelines or criteria, thank you, or criteria for what you're actually reviewing. Otherwise, then it's very squishy if you just have a design review board with no design review guidelines.
But wouldn't the board be charged with creating those guidelines, given what area of the city they were charged to work with?
Ultimately, it would have to be somewhere in the city code in order for us to really implement or to enforce something.
I understand that. I know that's where we're heading. Yeah.
So to the earlier point, if I may, we did point out, and thank you for mentioning the city council goal. It is in the brief memo, the specific language from the council goal, which is city staff has been directed to prepare a design overlay district for downtown to ensure compatibility of new buildings and renovations.
Well, then
So-
maybe that's the language we should use. I mean, if
Yeah.
it's in their goals,
Right.
yeah. Sure, cool. I didn't read their goals.
I also think, Matt's introduction is really good. I think I would do recent events, including the demolition of, not destruction, and then have generated, I don't think new concern, I think it's just ongoing concern. I mean, just regular concern,
Yeah,
I think is
yeah,
all you need.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy with, thanks for the comments.
No, I think it was really good.
Yeah.
That it's kind of a touchy thing between the guidelines. and whatnot.
Well, I mean, I think if the council has something in their goals, we should use that language. So, I mean, that's cool. Thanks for bringing that up.
Where might we put that?
Probably in that last full paragraph, maybe, do you think, or?
Yeah, I think Kim's suggestion, just replacing the
Design review
the
board.
design review board with an overlay, and, should we remind them that as in council goals or something like that? I mean,
We support the council goals.
yeah, right,
I mean, that,
Of creating,
right,
yeah.
yeah. We strongly support.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? So we'll take 2 word changes in the first couple of paragraphs provided by Matt. And we'll change the next paragraph with 3 things to include all 5 things.
All 5 or just 1, 2, 3, and 5?
What's for, yeah.
educating the public on the opportunities presented by historic preservation. That's the 4th.
Yeah, yeah.
I'd say all 5.
All 5,
Might as well.
okay. All 5.
And then are we doing anything to the block that Matt added acknowledging to?
Well,
With the third point.
yeah.
Okay. President of Design Review Boards, and you had wording for that? Do you want
Yeah,
to?
and I was trying to put something in there more, I was trying to put something in there more positive, what they do. And that's to provide guidance and ensure compatibility between new, existing, and historic development.
That's
Mhm.
great. Can you give that to staff
Did you get it?
to use?
Okay.
And the historic development in 3, do we need to put other critical neighborhoods or just in 3 neighborhoods, MOR, or maybe critical neighborhoods? I don't know. Maybe it's just a,
3, where,
I'm not a good language
the,
person.
The third
The
bullet
third
point.
bullet.
the city as president, president
yeah,
of Design and Development
Yeah, I see
Review
that. I'm
Boards
having a hard time
appointed.
putting the words that you have in there, knowing what to do with that.
Here, you want to?
Well, the other critical neighborhoods was in reference to the
Right.
MOR, Busey, Lincoln, and East Urbana. They were incorrectly sort of described in that bullet, so I don't know.
Can you read my writing? Sorry. Can't read it.
Well, I can't,
Can you read it one more time, just so we can all?
Okay, the city has a precedent of design and development review boards appointed to provide guidance and ensure compatibility between new, existing, and historic development in 3 other critical neighborhoods: MOR, Busey Lincoln Corridor, and East Urbana. Historic East Urbana.
I think it's a good addition.
Yeah.
I think it reads fine with critical in there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so we accept that proposed change, and then what was your, did you have anything else in that group?
Well, the 4th bullet, all I said was, there are currently no design or development guidelines overseeing development of the downtown area. I just,
Could we include both? Just say there are currently no guidelines nor a design review board overseeing,
I think that would be fine.
Okay.
since it's basically just highlighting why we're requesting action.
And then finally, that last sentence or so, we were going to kick in some city council goal language instead of design review board, right?
Take it away, Gina.
Well, I think that right now it's wishing to support the work of the planning division staff. So we had said that we strongly support the council goals of the creation of a design overlay. And I don't have the council goals right in front of me. But I think Lori had it.
If you could refer to the first page of the brief memo, there's in italics toward the bottom, it's just the one statement included.
First page, brief memo. Oh. Got it, so it's, yeah, so city staff has been directed to prepare a design overlay district for downtown to ensure compatibility of new buildings and renovations. So that kind of ties into that bullet change.
Could we simply just add that language
Right.
literally to the very end?
Right.
Expedite the protection of downtown Urbana through the creation of a a design review board,
Or-
and direct city staff to prepare a design overlay district for downtown to ensure the compatibility of new buildings and renovations. Does that, I don't think that muddles it down.
I think that would be fine, or you could strike the design review
Right,
board
board
thing
part out.
and just make most of that sentence be the city council goes. So that we would request that the Urbana City Council expedite the goal.
I don't want to lose the design review board part, though. I mean, and maybe I'm overreacting, but I want to see that happen. And yes, I want them to direct city staff to encourage that and reinforce what they've already kind of planned to do. But I think the review board's pretty important.
Well, yeah, but we need to review or whatever, design review or whatever that the other category was, Kim,
The-
that you had.
The overlay district?
overlay district.
Well, no, there is a design
Development.
or
Oh,
development review
yeah.
board.
Mhm.
I think if we put that in there, it should be design or development review board.
Mhm.
Isn't that correct? That's how I read the MOR as the MOR Development Review Board. And the Design Review Board is for the overlay districts of the Lincoln-Busey corridor and the historic East Urbana. Is that not?
I'm actually not sure if that's correct, but we're checking on that.
Yes.
Is the nature of the two?
Yes, that's correct. It is, sorry, it is the Development Review Board.
Yeah.
Are, what's the difference between the two? And which is more advantageous for what we're hoping to accomplish in downtown?
They each have their own different guidelines and different reasons that they were formed. So, and that would be the same with downtown Urbana. It would be a different, your guidelines are going to be different than what they are for these three different overlay districts.
Okay.
I think by using or, you're saying that either one of those or a mix of them, how, in what they call it probably is a little less important than how they build the board itself.
Well, we could do an and/or, right? That covers
Yeah.
everything.
Okay, so we'll put and/or, design and/or review board, and then kick in with the city council goals
Yes,
and close the paragraph?
yes. Deal?
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
Okay. Do you have enough, clear enough?
Perhaps what we'll do is finalize this, and perhaps it'd be appropriate to run it by the chair to ensure that it conforms with what you heard.
Okay.
I would ask, though, that you vote on this, since it is a correspondence to City Council.
Okay. All right, can we have a motion on the floor, please?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Moved by Scott, seconded by Matt. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The letter passes unanimously.
With many thanks to staff and everyone's patience in the process.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Yeah.
drafting.
Thank you
Yeah,
for bringing
thanks for
it
getting
up.
the ball rolling.
The next item on the agenda is monitoring historic properties, and Kevin passed out a Mumford House letter. I'm not even sure that we saw this before the commission before, really, but I know,
No, this was just a correspondence that I think was started back in October. I think Libby received a note from the granddaughter of Herbert W. Mumford, or sorry, from the daughter of Herbert W. Mumford Jr. Regarding the Mumford House. There was a little bit of correspondence, but she was just asking if there's something that we could do as a city, and we thought this would be appropriate to bring to the Historic Preservation Commission.
Do we know what the current state of the property is?
it's being maintained to some extent. In the rear of the house, there are bulkhead doors, which are the angled flippy doors to get to the basement space. And those are now closed. They look like maybe they're new doors on that part. And so it looks better secured in that area than it's looked for a while to me. But, it's not occupied. I don't know of any plan to occupy it. It's kind of in the same place it's been for the last several years, probably.
Do we have an address for that?
I don't know how that could be.
Fair enough.
South Glen Regal, yeah. It's past the dead end of Laredo Taft. Yeah.
Is there an address listed in the National Register for farmhouse?
I don't know what they did. It's a good point. So maybe we should just all think about things, maybe it's time for us to do another letter. Just to express our concern,
Who's the owner?
the university.
The university. Oh, good.
I think everybody wonders what it is. This time of the year when we have lots of new students and visiting students coming, they wonder what the building is, and there's no real interpretation around or anything. And certainly, I think the best thing for the building is to have somebody in it and have it used to some extent. But it hasn't been used in probably 10 years or more.
The address is 1403 East Laredo Chapter Ave,
Okay.
per the National Register.
Any other thoughts for now?
I love her idea about crowdfunding. I mean, it's innovative. We would need to certainly, I think, if we were to support that or to encourage it, I think we need to reinvigorate the case for preservation for it. Not that not that anyone's working to delist it or anything like that, but to kind of remind people why it's important, the story that it tells, if we were to go in that direction. I'm always inspired by people who care enough to take the time even when they don't live in town anymore, but it's important enough to them
Right.
to take the time to do that, and,
Yeah.
and that's so. At the very least, we say thank you to her before we continue forward with what she has to say.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Any other thoughts for now?
Just do it. So, are we? Do we go back down the letter path again with this, or we just kind of mull it about?
I think we mull it about, but I think probably we need to do something. There hasn't been any publicity about it or activity for quite a while, since we did the human chain around the building a few years ago. So it probably merits some attention, whatever we can do. Any other monitoring of other properties? Nope.
I do.
Yes.
The property that we were sent the demolition notification on out on Cunningham. It said on the notification that demolition would not begin until I believe it was June 8th. That is already well underway, and so I don't know.
This is the hotel.
This is
right?
the old hotel. Yeah, I mean, I recognize that we're not making a huge historic preservation issue of that, but I do have expressed concern that the construction company did not read the fine print enough, or the owners, and they went ahead and started prior to that. I think that's not a good precedent to set, because if we do get a notice on something that we need to raise a flag about, and the thing's gone, that happens all over this country all the time, and we need to make sure that that it's made clear that that's not acceptable behavior.
Lori or Kevin, do you know how that happens, or?
We can look into it.
Okay, thank you.
I did have one other thing,
Uh-huh.
Alice. I think everyone got a copy of an email from Dennis Roberts about the 2 properties on East California. Was I the only one to get this email?
I didn't get it.
Okay, well, Dennis, who's Council District 5 representative, is concerned about what I believe is a demolition request for, I'm trying to find the numbers of these right now, if you'll kind of bear with me here as the email cranks up. 702 and I think it's 709 East California. And did you guys get copies of this? Were you at all aware of this? Okay, well, then I need to try to find this a little bit harder. Or I will at least agree, I'll forward it to the rest of you guys.
Actually, if you could forward that to staff, please,
Okay.
in order not to violate the Open Meetings Act.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'll forward it to staff. There are a couple of small workmen's cottages. One's been boarded up for quite some time. They're both kind of like this, on small homes on big lots on East California. And Dennis is interested in whether or not there's a way with which they might be preserved as opposed to torn down. Do you have that email, Gina?
No, I just brought up 702.
Okay, 702, yeah. The building stock in that part of town was a lot like this. This is where the Big Four ran into town, probably pretty low-income railway workers were people that lived in the area. And so I guess he considers it to be sort of vernacular structure of interest. I mean, there's no chance that these are going to be associated with probably a nominatable landmark status. And so the question then becomes what we could do to advocate for those structures or structures like that.
This reminds me, I had my students this past year doing surveys in that area, instead of just in West Urbana, and I owe you guys the surveys. I'll try to do that by next week. And I'll see if either of these places was surveyed, or if you can get the exact addresses.
Yeah, well, I'll give it to staff so that they
Right.
can distribute it, and I apologize for it. I'm kind of in transition between using Yahoo Mail and Gmail, and right now I don't have Yahoo Mail loaded on this, and that's probably where I stashed it
Okay.
at the moment. But I guess the question is, besides, code compliance in terms of condition, what can this group or the city do to try to maintain these smaller, frankly, kind of low-value structures? And if you guys haven't heard anything about a demolition notice for them, then,
I would need to look into it, but it's potential that those addresses may be on a really low on a blight reduction, potential blight reduction list.
That's exactly
So it's
what
not as
they're
though
on.
they're going to demo them tomorrow. So
Okay, so we've
we
got
can add
time
some
to-
clarity once we get the email from you, and we can
Yeah.
clarify that.
Yeah.
later.
Okay, great, thank you.
I'd like to pick up the ball a little bit on what you said, because I brought show and tell, and this actually relates directly to that sort of thing. So I came into this brick from someone who was kind of interested. I'll put it up there because I know our friends up there want to see it. So it says Western Paver on it, and this came from one of the properties at 103, 101, 103, 105 Lincoln, which were torn down. And I feel like kind of what Scott was saying was I guess registering in me something that I thought when I saw this, is that this I don't know exactly when this brick dates to, but they were making these kinds of bricks. I found at least visual evidence of this kind of brick dating to at least 1905. So this certainly is historic, goes back away, helps to tell the story of the city of Urbana, its development, and certainly its historic infrastructure and what may have been on that property at some point. But here, this is to me a great example of we have things that are historic, things that are not necessarily covered in a district per se, or that have landmark status, or something that we traditionally provide guidance on or supervision of. And so I don't know what else we can do to encourage perhaps a more thoughtful approach to some of these properties that are not necessarily going to be preserved because they're associated with a master architect or, Joseph Royer.
Well, I'm reminded that we spent a lot of time a few years ago on a conservation district provision, and we still have no conservation districts. In fact, I think in all of the state of Illinois, there are no conservation districts, or there's one maybe. And that was kind of one of the things that we were looking at, was this different layer that wouldn't have to uphold to the standards of historic districts, that could still give some protection and some recognition to these areas. And absolutely nothing has happened with that as a tool that we can use.
At the city level or at the state level?
City.
Is that something that's, I guess, I guess I'll throw this out also context-wise, is that I drive through Champaign and I'm not shocked when I see old buildings coming down left and right. But when I start seeing it in Urbana, that starts to bother me. I mean, it bothers me in Champaign too, but this is something that I'm passionate about for the city that I live in. And so I see these things and I note the continual march from campus town. We're going to get these superstructures that are going to start moving our direction. They're going to start moving east throughout the city. So you lose structures like 101, 103, 105, Lincoln, and what's next? Eventually that's going to jump the street.
What is going in to replace those houses, do you know?
Well, I don't know, but I do in a visual well, and maybe staff knows, but what I can say is that there's I think it's 903 Western is adjacent to that. And so it's basically one very large plot. So it would not shock me if whoever was managing this had intentions of building a rather large structure where there used to be individual homes. So I don't know if it's worth exploring the concept of this conservation district, and unfortunately I don't know anything about it because I wasn't around at that point, but I see things like this that are telling me, bricks like this tell me, hey, there's historic properties that are going away that aren't necessarily going to be on the National Register, and that are telling the story of our city's past and the people who lived here. So, and that concerns me in seeing the business trend of these larger structures starting to head right toward some very historic areas. And historic areas not just acknowledged, but areas that have fantastic old houses that add to our understanding of local culture.
Agreed.
Well put. I found the email. It's 702 and 707 East California. They are listed for demolition in the Habitat for Humanity IHDA Blight Reduction Program grant resolution that went to City Council late last month. And Dennis describes them as the 702 building, solid-looking house, unoccupied since the demise of owner, good roof, uniquely detailed front window treatment. He suspects unique interior features. 707, a rare example of pre-1900 cottage that once was typical in historic East Urbana Neighborhood Association, HUNA we call it. Original porch, original clapboard siding, great example of a vernacular cottage style.
Would it be appropriate to pull this up on the screen? Do you think is that possible? Thanks, Kevin. Because we can see it here, but I know that there are people that are going to be seeing this at home, and it would be good to engage them as well. What were the addresses again, Scott?
702 and 707 East California. Dennis summarizes, there are a few homes in the neighborhood that have not undergone some remodeling that has compromised their exterior appearance over the decades. The removal by demolition will be a significant loss to the historic quality of the neighborhood, as few remaining structures survive from this period that retain their original integrity. And so this is the working man cottage kind of thing, the Big Four Railroad where it came through. Actually, on California, one of those probably nearly fronts the railroad right-of-way, which has been surrendered back to the neighborhoods. So some of those have really big, beautiful side lawns because the tracks are not there anymore.
Is that 702?
That is 702.
Oh, 707 should be.
Seven oh seven's on the corner. It's the next one down.
Next one down. Okay, thanks.
Aren't electronic maps amazing?
Yeah, that's it.
10 years ago, this would have taken a lot more legwork.
Yeah,
Oh, you can't
yeah.
place it. Oh. Move this way a little bit.
So yeah, I guess, Matt, the question is, how do we value these? You know, I mean, I know exactly where you're coming from with the things that you were talking about. And frankly, that was valuing this is one of the reasons that I asked to be on the commission 10 years or so ago now. In my neighborhood, we have a Royer, but it's north of Green, and I believe it's in R4 at least. But south of Green Street, in that older part of Urbana, there may be a couple of metal homes, Aristons, we call those. Lustrons, thank you. I think I've identified a couple of those, but other than that, there just aren't structures that are significant in the context of landmarking. And so the question becomes, you know, how you can support a neighborhood. I make a lot of calling to UPW. Jason Aerosmith, who is sort of their environmental code compliance person, knows me really well, because I'm one of these people that will call and say, "There's junk in the yard. You know, what's happening with our owners not supposed to upkeep structures?" But the fact of the matter is, in our neighborhood, 60% of the homes are rentals. And so you've got this wear down to tear down, I haven't used that phrase in these meetings for a while, scenario that really changes the nature of these neighborhoods. And then, you know, the owner of the lot, of course, can come in and choose either just to demo and not rebuild, or to rebuild pretty much anything that they want. And I mean, I agree with Mr. Roberts in this context that these are a couple of buildings, we have one cottage on Weber. I don't know exactly I wasn't here when it was landmarked. 107, right, north?
Oh, the local landmark.
The local landmark.
The Gothic Revival.
The Gothic
Cottage.
Revival Cottage. But neither of these have the ornamental kind of woodwork that would cause a person to be interested in those, or to make them something that really stands out in the community, unless you're a walker, you know, unless you go by these places.
They're both great looking houses. I mean, the one that we're looking at right now is a really high degree of integrity. I mean, it looks like it even has original porch posts on it.
Yeah.
So, Lori, what is the status? Is this a done deal? They're gone?
I don't have the details. I'd recommend you look at the staff report that was in the council packet of last week, I think it was, as you indicated. There'll be a lot more details in there. You can see which list it's on, and where it is on the list, and some of the details of the program.
And that 702 looks so nicely cared for.
That's an older photograph, though. It's
Okay.
boarded now.
Is it board? Oh.
Yeah, it's been
Jeez.
boarded for a while, I think.
Oh, because the resident passed.
I'll have to refer you back to the staff memo. I'm sorry, I don't have the details, and I don't want to misspeak.
Well, let me start by seeing if these were surveyed as part of my students' work. See if there might be a story behind either of them, for starters. And then we all should look at the staff report and the council packet from last week that Lori refers us to.
Is there, and I know there are lots of things that we can use to consider the worthiness of something to be preserved because of its age and its significance to history. But do we have, and I'm pointing this kind of toward staff because maybe you know, do we have a resource, a database, a map, something along those lines that lists the construction date of, say, every property within city boundaries?
No, we don't. We have what Alice's students have surveyed. So I think most of those buildings would have at least an approximate construction date. We do not have that for the entire city.
What about your neighborhood group, HUNA? Are people aware of this, or?
Well, Dennis has forwarded it to some of us. You know, like a lot of these totally volunteer organizations, you know, our interest waxes and wanes. And we still try to take a lick on our brick sidewalks occasionally. Well, actually, that's what brought me to this commission. This group couldn't stimulate a motion for brick sidewalk preservation. That's right. I griped about it. So that's where we're at. Right now, I'd call us kind of fractured and meeting irregularly and not very effective. I mean, I can take this to that group and see what happens, you know. I mean, sometimes what we need is something to work on. So I can do that part.
You must recall the Conservation District proposals. You were on the commission then. You don't? Because you were advocating, at first it was within the purview of the Historic Preservation Commission, and then you wanted it separate, as I recall, and it ended up being separated out. But it was on the Plan Commission agenda and Council agenda and our agenda for probably a better part of a year before it finally went through. Really? Oops. All right, I'll send you a
I'm pretty
link.
certain I wasn't here at that time. You can
Okay.
interpret that any way you want, I
Oh.
guess. But I don't remember. No, I don't remember. I
Okay.
don't remember. And it's been a long time. So
Are there any county agencies? Are there any city agencies who would have gathered? Because I presume, I guess I don't know what your students do, Alice, in terms of the level of observation or the detail that they gather. I was, to my mind, I was just thinking that perhaps if we had something that was color coded that we could look at as certain historic areas, areas that were constructed around the same period. If we know, okay, this area was built right after World War II, so we want to start to focus on that. But as of right now, it seems like I guess we don't have any data unless somebody specifically goes and looks it up in the deeds. Is that information kept in a property? I guess I don't know.
I mean, there's
Tax records?
There's nothing that's mapped, but there are a lot of survey forms between what my students have done and what PACA did years back as well, too. So then it's just a question of, you know, how those piece together and how consistent they've been on certain streets. I know for my student assignments, you know, I try to find buildings that are more interesting, and I'm pretty sure somebody did this one this past year. And I do recall it was boarded up. But I don't necessarily have them do every house on the block.
Right.
Just depending on what's there. So there's not anything, Cunningham Township records, they have property index cards that have somebody's guesstimation on a date from who knows when.
Okay.
And sometimes they're accurate and sometimes not. But that would, you know, probably be a quicker way to put something together that would be map-based, that would just have dates on it, construction dates.
Right. Well, maybe, and this may not be the time, and I know that there's a lot of things that we're putting out there, but somewhere down the line, I feel like that might be helpful to our commission to really start to begin to make some assessments and to aid staff in helping to, well, and citizens really, to help recognize historic structures and to educate people about why are things historic, or examples like this property, just because it wasn't built by a rock star architect or because it has, it doesn't look like, Sylvia's place over on Green Street. It doesn't have to look like that. It doesn't have to be that incredible to tell an important story and be worthy of preservation. But I don't know that we have enough data to begin kind of doing more monitoring of historic properties that are not simply landmarks.
Well, I would recommend that we all try to drive by these properties and take a look at them in context of what else is around. And Lori, could you send out the link to his Conservation District ordinance? I know everybody's looking at me like I dreamed this up or something, but
I just had to.
I did not dream this up.
I had to look that up for somebody from somewhere up in the northern part of the state a couple weeks ago, so I can
So
find
you know
that.
that I'm not dreaming.
Yes, it's there, and
Thank you.
I had
Thank
heard
you.
tales about it previously, and then I got an inquiry, so
Okay, thank you.
I can find it.
Okay, any other monitoring of other historic properties? If not, is there a staff report?
Just a couple of quick updates. You'll notice I think in the last sentence of the brief memo that I wrote for this meeting, we are currently conducting a building design survey for the downtown area as part of our design review district process, or whatever you want to call it. I think we've surveyed over 60 buildings as of earlier today.
Who's
Um,
doing that?
Max?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then also to follow up on the interactive web map grant that we got, and we did put out the intern ad a couple weeks back. That's closing this Friday. We have 9 applicants so far, and definitely some qualified people there. So I think we'll be able to move forward with that. We're also sort of running the project through our legal department and getting their feedback on web mapping and what they think about it. So that's moving forward as well. So it's exciting stuff. And that's it.
Thank you.
I happened to notice the other day that the Freeman House on West Elm, the capital that was missing on one of the pillars has been replaced
With,
it looks like maybe either a recreation or
Really?
the original that's been repaired. So all 4 of them are up now.
wow,
Yeah, I just happened to drive by the other day and notice it, so I
Thanks.
just thought I'd let you guys know.
that's big.
Okay.
We have no study session. Next is announcements. Any announcements from anybody? Remember, the State Preservation Conference is later this month at June 23rd through the 26th, if you're still able to go. City folks are going. Who's going? Kevin?
Me, Jeff, and Chris.
Wow. Okay. One thing that I should mention is with regard to emails back and forth, we need to go through city staff to have things sent out. We need to be cautious because I know everybody's well-intentioned, but we're in violation of the Open Meetings Act if we're communicating among all of us as a group. So if you have changes to a letter that are proposed, for example, that needs to go through Lori or Kevin, and then distributed to us otherwise, through handouts here or other means. So we can't have an e-meeting by batting around emails back and forth. We need to go through the city.
Clarification, up to 3 of us can communicate before we're in violation of the Open Meetings Act, is that right?
That's right.
Yes, but we would, of course, encourage you not to have those kinds of conversations if you can avoid them.
Right.
I think I misinterpreted it in the context of
No,
just
it's
saying-
easy. It's just so easy to hit send and have everything go out. So I completely understand, but so this was just a refresher reminder that.
I
this
thought
is-
I actually did go online to refresh myself and to look at it. It was I had read it just it was under my incorrect assumption that sending the email just becomes that email then becomes part of the public record, not that it was a violation of the Open Public Meetings Act, which is why I sent it, because I was like, well, sure, if anyone wants to access this, that's
Yeah.
fine by me. Yeah, and that's only going to accelerate the process because we can drag on and on and on if we.
It's fine. It was just
Yeah,
a
sorry
friendly
about
reminder that everybody needs, because we're all tempted to send emails. It's just an easy thing to do. Anything else? Anybody? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you.